Good day, everyone. There is no appropriate ilhqot'in greeting otherwise than in the morning. Personally, if I were with you, I would say honiltaha, how are you doing? And that sort of thing to begin. Sida go Randy setsade. Ilhqot'in, First Nation Desni. I come from the Ilhqot'in First Nation among the Ninkainit people, also known as ilhqot'in. In interior British Columbia. Roughly the area is called geographically the Chilcotin Plateau because the Mido couldn't get the name quite right. Ilhqot'in and Chilcotin aren't really the same, but they do the best they can. So we're an association. The Ilhqot'in National Government is an association of 6 independent nations. The Estela community, sometimes called Alexandria, Lesko, sometimes called Tusi, Ledinko, sometimes called Anaham, Tidaldel, sometimes called Redstone, the Yonasaitin, sometimes known as the Stony, and the Ilhqot'in, also called Nemaya Valley. As several people used to say a number of years ago, Ilhqot'in, that's not heaven, but it's a local call from there. It's the most beautiful place on earth. Of course, I'm biased. All of the other communities would equally state a claim to being God's country. We are very, very happy to be with you today to talk through education from the standpoint that I am a very new employee of TNG, and they have just sort of created an education department to oversee a move to self-governance. So our first task is to sort of say, how do we get responsibility for education? Now, our Nitsilin Kai, our chiefs, have said that for them, self-governance means self-governance all the way from the earliest stages, so early childhood education, all the way through university. And so what we're trying to establish is a unified school authority, a kind of school board at the national level that would have continuity at all those areas. And what we have hit upon as a means of doing this is to have local representation from each of the communities, such that none of the communities are marginalized in terms of advocacy. And each of the communities have a voice in setting policy and establishing the practices and policies and that sort of thing. One of the things that has come to light in talking with the various communities has been that in pre-contact times, it's very much taken for granted. It's considered to be self-evident that all education was land-based. And so education on the land, or what the Ilhqot'in call the Nen, the land, is very, very important. It teaches us, it guides us, it encourages us. The properties of the land make certain things evident to us. And so the idea that education from its earliest level to its very highest level should be land-based and not divorced from being out on the land. Another key element that we have identified is that education should be fundamentally language revitalizing. So we need to reestablish, we have right now some of the highest levels of fluency of nation members. We have more than 20% of our nation are fluent speakers, engage in Ilhqot'in communication, not just on a daily basis, but actually feel more comfortable in Ilhqot'in than in Mirocha, or what we call English. So we've got a good base from which to have revitalization. But what that means, because we are members of a school districts, and even the First Nations school authority is primarily English-based, what that means is that we need to establish curriculum and credentialing of language teachers at every level, from ECE right up through university. Happy to say that one of the local universities has started its first ever Ilhqot'in university credit course and has just met for its first week this winter. We have 3 levels that have been set up, so that's progressing in terms of university, and hopefully we'll continue that towards a full Bachelor of Arts in ilhqot'in fluency in years to come. The other thing that I should mention by way of a foundational value is that because the land teaches us, there are certain laws that are considered to arise from the nature of the territory where the ilhqot'in live. And this is within the nation, it's called a tzrihtan. That's a hard term to translate. Probably the best equivalent there would be to think of it as a constitution, but not in a sense of ratification or governmental authority, more in a sense of this is what the land constitutes in us as ways of being. So when we establish, as we have established, a tripartite agreement with the federal government and the provincial government, we call it what's the Pathways Agreement. We have that established. It is something that is foundational from the standpoint that we listen to the land. The land helps us to understand what our values should be and what our motivation should be as we move forward. Now, because we're at the initial stages of this, I don't have a lot to report in the way of experience or history and that sort of thing, but I want to sort of give you an idea of what we're trying to do. We currently deal with 3 separate ministries in trying to educate our young people within the nation. So we have to deal with the health, interior health in regard to ECE. That's one area of governance. A second area of governance is the Ministry of Education, and that would cover K through 12 instruction. But then you have the Ministry of Advanced Education over the post-secondary area. So it's very, very difficult to establish coherence when you're dealing with and I know that many people are in this situation, but I just want to sort of mention that. Further complicating the process is that not all of our communities want to work within the provincial school district setup, so that we have, through the incredible creativity and innovation of the First Nations Education Steering Committee, an Indigenous provincial organization, has set up the First Nations School Authority that is helping us with so-called band schools or band operated schools. But this further complicates the situation because one student in one community is educated through First Nations School Authority. Another in a different institute, in a different community, is educated through the provincial school district, and trying to keep those levels of instruction, those levels of competency coherent is like further complicates the situation. We, as an education team, like I am the adult and language programs manager for the ilhqot'in national government. My counterpart, Lisa Boyd, is the manager for ECE and K through 12. And we work very well together with a team of community education coordinators. Each of the 6 communities has community education coordinators that help to support students and to encourage performance and attendance and competency, and to help with funding and those sorts of things. And all of that is sort of overseen and managed by our community liaison, Sherry Stump. And so we have quite a good team developing from the standpoint of people to implement. But what we want to do is to come back to the communities, and you might understand that this is next to impossible to do in COVID times. Especially in a situation as ours, we're very remote, and that's one of the reasons that I had the question for Veronica, is because none of our communities is anywhere close to an urban center. Williams Lake is the largest town. That's where our national offices are located, because it's the shopping community for the entire region. But we have as much as 4 hours of drive time from some of our communities along gravel highways in order to get into Williams Lake. And that's, of course, 4 hours when the roads aren't icy as they are now, or burning as they are sometimes, like the summer of 2017, which we don't want to go back to, but we have to deal with as a reality. We've had crises. We moved directly from flooding to fire season, so forth and so on. And that further complicates the educational picture. But we are making progress. We are excited about the future. We're excited about all the things that are coming together as people begin to celebrate being and supporting Indigenous people, and working together and working independently from the standpoint of without outside interference or the implementation of outside values. So one of the things that we're looking at as a kind of metaphor is, you might say, okay, if you take this is my left hand, so, and I'm left-handed, but take this as the colonial representation of the colonial education system. It serves and it services, but unfortunately, Ninkaini people have been marginalized by that system. And what seems to the current governing structures seem to want to do is to take ilhqot'in elements and values and inject those into the system. Well, that would be really, really good, except that implies a lot of conflict and a lot of turmoil. What our chiefs would like to see us do is to begin with an understanding of what a ilhqot'in person needs to be on the land and to be a proper person, and to bring in colonial elements as needed to fill gaps. And if you wonder what I mean by gaps, I'm thinking, for example, traditionally, there might not be an understanding of how computers should be built and maintained and repaired, and how training should go on in that area. So that would be an example. Another example might be electrical or mechanical engineering and design and maintenance and those sorts of things. So the ilhqot'in people are very, very happy to have the outside institutions come and provide specific training for on-the-job training, trades, and even academics, research and development and those sorts of things, but to supplement what is already an ongoing and fully functioning ilhqot'in way of life. So we're excited to be able to do that in the future, and really excited to become, as we have joined FNEAA this past year, and we're really excited to network with people who are around Turtle Island and in various places. And I particularly want to acknowledge the incredible stewardship of the nations in Atlantic Canada, in showing us, in many ways, showing us educationally, leading in significant ways, leading the way for us to understand governance and education, training, and keeping values on the land at the same time that you're getting credentials in technical areas. So Chanahia, which in my language means thanks to all of you.